Hello, everybody. I am Joe Park, CEO of Horizon Stewardship. I'm going to welcome you today to how to talk about generosity, life change, and impact during social distancing. We've got two great speakers for you today. We have with us today Kem Meyer. Kem is a nationally recognized marketing, branding, and communication expert. She's got over 30 years in advertising and marketing, advocating for user engagement. She's led major church communication departments, consults with business. She is the real deal. Joining her today is Ben Strout. Ben is Chief Architect and President of Velocity Strategy Solutions. Ben helps design, develop, and deploy data-driven business growth strategies. He's a futurist, a disruptor, a digital master, content activist, and data champion.
Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and have this conversation with you. I'm super excited to have my friend and someone I absolutely admire on here, and I'm anxious to pick her brain about what's happening, because I know it's always good. Kem is somebody that I've known for nearly a decade now, and every single time she delivers. So I know today's conversation is just going to be rock solid. And I think right now, one of the things that's kind of interesting in having this conversation is that every church leader is rethinking or reacquainting themselves with communication. As many of us did 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a normal pattern of responsibilities and a normal pattern to our workflows. And this whole period of the coronavirus outbreak and social distancing brought a new flavor to that, if you will. And for many churches, they were pushed out of their weekend service because we can't meet into the web and all of the different varieties that come along with that. And so what we want to make sure is that you as a church leader are fully equipped and ready to think through the big rocks as you begin to create a new sense of normal around how you're engaging with your community and your church. And Kem is absolutely going to help us do that. So Kem, I think I see you on mute real quick, just so you can hit that on your side. But one of the things I'm most interested in, because I think your perspective on this is so good, is what are the biggest mistakes that you're seeing right now?
Okay. Well, by the way, thanks for that impossible setup, Ben. That's totally impossible, but I'll do my best. Also, I want to tell you guys up front, I'm looking between two screens right now. So that's for your benefit, whether you realize it or not, because I can go off on quite a few rabbit trails. So I have a couple of anchors over here to remind me where I'm supposed to land, or I don't know where I'll take you. I could take you anywhere. So if you see me jumping back over there, that's why.
We're just along for the ride, Kem. We're just along for the ride.
Well, anyway, hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's an important topic, not just because of the season we're in, but because of the season we're in, people are leaning in like never before, and that's a really good thing. And so, Ben, I'll be honest, that question, what are the mistakes I'm seeing, I was pretty fired up at first. I'm a communication junkie. I'm an advocate for clarity and engagement, and I love the local church. And so, I was frustrated at the beginning, not just like with companies and not-for-profits, and just really, really amped up. But I realized everybody is really doing the best they can. And we've had like 10 years of cultural change that's happened in 1 month. And so I'm kind of just thinking, all right, that was then, this was now. And it's kind of going forward. And so I've narrowed down the mistakes that I'm seeing. And these are mistakes that we just don't want to repeat. Like, it's kind of drawing a line in the sand. Let's get through this Holy Week. Let's take a breath after Easter. And then let's really make sure that we're not asking the question. And Latrice, this is a great time to throw that next slide up. Kind of shifting our question, like, hey, how do we keep doing what we're doing? But instead, how will we do what we're going to do in a different world? And that Simon Sinek has a 6-minute video on YouTube you can find. He just last week, he was talking to his staff meeting. So and I don't know if it was staged or real, it doesn't matter. The content was incredible. And there's a guy wearing a tiara on his staff. And so I don't know if you're doing that with your Zoom calls, but I highly encourage it. Anyway,
I'm
great
gonna skip
question.
the tiara, but man, that video from Simon was absolutely fantastic, Kim. As soon as you posted about that, I watched it and I shared it with as many people as I could share it with, because it was just so timely. Go ahead, take the opportunity to mourn that things have changed, and so it gives us the freedom to let go of the things that we've been doing and really get a chance to reach for those new things.
Yeah. So with all that set up, I'll answer the two questions. I think the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing out there right now is that we're acting like business as usual, right? And we're doing too much. So the right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing, and it can have devastating consequences for our reputation. So I know that it started out with all these good intentions, all of us, I mean, me included, lots of good intentions, but they land at the wrong time. And just really pausing and taking a breath and paying attention to the situational awareness. And the vehicle we used 2 weeks ago doesn't get us to where it did 2 weeks ago.
But we were doing it so well, Kim. I mean, we were so good at it. So why let it go?
So we thought.
This is true. Fair enough.
So I just think that it's okay if the first thing we figured out was how do we do a digital version of what we do? Okay, great. You got that under your belt. And if you haven't, there's people that can help you, and there's like baby steps you can take. But really the win is not just a digital version of your usual, right? That's not what people are looking for. So we can get into some examples and go into that a little bit deeper, but that's the first thing. There's new problems to be solved. There's new environments that people are dealing with that's hindering their emotional capacity, their physical capacity, their cognitive capacity. So we've got to change what we do to accomplish the objective, not business as usual. And the second thing is just doing too much. So this is, it's just human nature in crisis, or when you're feeling like things are out of control, or you're feeling helpless, you just start moving as fast and reactive as possible. I just want to be helpful. So I'm seeing a lot of churches and well-meaning pastors frantically trying to create more content to help their church and the community. And that is not what people need. They don't need more content. They're not looking for more teaching and sermon series right now. They're looking for more comfort, more chaplains, more pastoral care, evidence that, like, just some of the simple comfort and meeting the basic needs. So how we shepherd and care and make things accessible looks different today than it did 4 weeks ago. If you look at it this way, we were dealing with, like, Ben, where is it that you live again?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, Nashville. So you get it. Nashville is so congested with traffic. Well, the roads are open right now. There's not traffic jams, but people are drowning in information overload and streaming, and people are having seizures from too many Zoom calls. And so they don't need more streaming of what we do, right?
100%. And, in that, Kim, when you think about new problems to be solved, I think one of the things that I'm curious to get your opinion on is kind of the dichotomy of organizational centric, versus, donor centric communication. And I think it's wildly important. We've been talking about with my for-profit clients, we've been talking about customer centric selling, and my nonprofit clients, donor centric selling, and we're now kind of having that conversation within the church as well. And I think the natural reaction in a time like this is to talk a lot about you, when really we need to be talking about them. And even though I think our intent is to talk about them, if we're not careful, we end up talking about us and our needs and what we need. And man, that comes across as really not just bad timing, but it's just a turnoff. And it really can have some lasting effects. And so I'm curious, as you're evaluating the space, looking at what people are doing really well and not well, where do you draw the line between communicating as an organization, about themselves or about the person that you're trying to reach? And how do you get better at that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a question I'm like pretty hyper about outside of times of crisis. Like the rules of connection and engagement and trust, and that applies to interpersonal communication. It also translates to corporate communication, and there's different ways that you can handle it. So, but even more so now, tolerance is lower, anxiety is heightened. And so now more than ever, we just got to steward that well. But before I can answer that, I think it's important we recognize just like the cognitive reality of what happens on a screen, because we have to know that first and understand it cognitively before we start talking about what we want to talk about, right? And so I don't know, have you ever heard of The Smarter Screen, the book The Smarter Screen?
I haven't.
Okay,
Another one I'm going to add to my list.
Yeah, it's a decent read, but the best thing is the author. His name is Shlomo Benzarti. Shlomo. Is that the best name?
Are you sure you're saying it right?
I'm saying it right. Shlomo. Like, no question. He's a behavioral economist at UCLA. And so he just talks about just like the cognitive reality of what happens with screen time and the human brain. So I pulled a couple of stats for everyone. I read the book so you don't have to. And these things are relevant and it's important. This is just the reality. Do you remember when, well, any of you office watchers out there, do you remember when Michael Scott was watching the GPS and he's like, no, it says to go here. And he would not stop looking at the GPS and he drove into the lake. We
100%.
don't want to do that. Right?
And it was Toby's fault.
Yeah, right. Well, we don't want to do that. So this is one of those times. Stop for a second, because the GPS is out of date. So put that down for a second. And let me just give you I think these stats are helpful. So first of all, like, there's over 1 billion websites. So the answer to all of our problems is not our website, because there's 1 billion of them out there, right? It's important we recognize that. And we're competing with 1 billion websites and everybody has access to all of them. The second thing is the human brain, and this is all like scientifically, there's research and studies, and it's all sourced in that book. I know I'm working with some academics here and some intellectuals, and all of this is sourced in that book if you want to know where it comes from. Because I know that trick. Studies say.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. It's the classic. It's like emphatic in literature.
Yes, it is.
If you're not sure what to say, just say it's emphatic.
It's been proven
right.
by my observation. But anyway, the human brain, the short-term memory, like a strong short-term memory, has the ability to hold 4 pieces of memory at a time, the short-term memory. So it's important for us to know that too. That's on a good day. I would say it's probably closer to 2 or 3 for the average person, right? So the human brain can just short-term memory 4 items, no more than that.
And we're not factoring in the reality of crisis response, right? Because in crisis, we're now even our capacity to retain and interact with information is even less.
Yes. And just spoiler alert to anybody who may be listening, there's good news in all of this, but it's just important we acknowledge this first. The other thing, anytime 2 things are happening at once, the human brain's attention capacity immediately drops 50%. So for example, if I'm driving and I'm talking on the phone at the same time, immediately what I pay attention to is diminished 50%. I notice 50% less things, including pedestrians and red lights. So that's just cognitive research. Now, the different things that you drop is different per person, and then this is something that I think will be very, very helpful. I mean, it could be one of the only, like, if this is the only thing you take away, it could be very helpful. But I don't know if anyone's heard of the halo effect when it comes to behavioral engagement. This is not the halo effect of, your angel donors or your angel kid. It is the halo effect of behavioral engagement. And that is when one prominent feature is so appealing that it influences a person's judgment about the whole. So if you can appeal to someone's subconscious and just get them at the first impression and subconsciously lower their defenses, they've got tons of forgiveness for everything else, right? So that's what the halo effect is. Make sure that you've got your prominent first impression or your prominent feature is so rewarding and impressive or good that all the rest is, there's just so much more tolerance. I think it's important to know all of that. All right. Then we can move into answering your questions. Is there anything you want to say about any of that?
So one of the things that's striking about that is that I think the end of that, the philosophical end of that, is that this is not about the transmission of information, but this is about how I feel when you're talking to me. Which, if that is part of our mind, it seems to me it would be a natural way for us to think about, is what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, is that just to transmit information? Or am I trying to create a feeling or a sense of security, especially in light of a crisis situation or an abnormal situation, that would make somebody feel comfortable? Because that emotion is, really connected to trust and connection. And those things really afford us the opportunity to say something to someone that could be unbelievably meaningful. And in times like this, as I've described it, it's kind of like a wedding or a birth or a funeral. You're always going to remember where you were in relation to certain brands coming out of experiences like this, because they're so highly emotionally charged that if we're able to create that halo effect that you're talking about by creating an emotion inside me that gives me security and connection and trust, that is going to afford you, as the church, as the leader, the opportunity to say something to me that I'm actually going to pay attention to. Is that feels like where you're going with this?
It is. I'm so glad you brought it up, and it's important. I flipped that. Like a typical pushback I get from intellectuals or academics or scholars, they'll say, my job is not to make people feel good. And I'm like, fair enough. But here's what the science tells you. If you trigger the wrong emotion, then you are not going to get your desired response. So this is about removing barriers, and it's about sequenced communication. So, and so it's just science. This is not a woo-woo feel good, make sure you give everybody what they want, because that's the defensive reaction. And I think we get that. Latrice, I'm ready for that next slide. One thing that will make this more simple, because this is the good news in all this. I promised you good news. So if those are our facts about the cognitive realities of the screen and the real hurdles that we're facing with just human emotions and stress levels and what the brain is going to let in, it is not about getting information out. It's about getting through for a desired response. It's about getting through.
I like that. It's about getting through.
So this is important.
That's connection.
It is, and engagement. And honestly, this is about us serving, right? It's not about a transaction. So that's a journey over time. There's this decision tree you can go through in this time. And I encourage you to do this after Easter and just stop for a second and ask yourself this question. Does what we offered 3 weeks ago meet the needs of today, the immediate needs of today? And if yes, these are some questions you can answer. And if no, these are some questions you can answer. Things get simple in a hurry. Nothing else matters right now. This is a good news. There's so many leaders in our religious institutions that are frustrated because they're trying to make change, but they come up against institutional muscle memory or historical preference or feel-good comfort zones. And the change management is what's the lack of change management, or the interior rebellions is what's preventing progress and connection with the communities and neighborhoods around us. Guess what?
Okay, you're going to have to unpack. What does interior rebellion mean?
All of our insiders.
Yeah.
It's just I like things the way they are. This is how it works. And this is essential. And this is non-negotiable. Well, overnight, the globe.
That never happens in church.
Right. The globe has just erased a bunch of stuff that was essential before. So you've got an opportunity now that you haven't had in years to reinvent and reimagine. And so you can take a breath and say, all right, what are we going to do right now?
What I love about what you just said, so this is a time to reinvent. Now that sounds like a scary word, right? Because I may not already be somebody who understands conceptually or philosophically communication. I might understand preaching, or I might understand pastoral care. So the idea of reinvention sounds really scary, but the idea of a decision tree feels very accessible. And I think what I don't want everyone to miss, and I think what you said is so rich, is that this is an opportunity to take everything that you were doing prior to 3 weeks ago, everything that you started doing over the last 3 weeks, and you get the opportunity to say yes or no to it. And you've afforded a criterion which to go by. So reinvention sounds scary, but taking things that we've committed to recently in the short term, things that we have been doing in the long term, what an unbelievable and amazing opportunity to say, we get to reboot and rebuild and restructure our communication in such a way that it's not just engineered around what we thought was most important, and perhaps that might have been the weekend experience, but really what happens all 7 days, particularly what happens between Sundays. So I don't want people to feel overwhelmed by that idea of reinvention, but I want them to be enchanted by the freedom that comes with that, to say, I can finally let go of X. And everyone has a list of X. We could just not do these things anymore. Now we have permission to do that. And everything has Y's, right? These are the things that we want to take on, and that we want to keep doing, we want to get better at. And you're affording us the chance to do that. So how does this decision tree, how do we collect all of those things, and how do we process them through this decision?
So yeah, because now we need to get to practical, because if I was on this webinar, I would be like, okay, great. Thanks for all these concepts. Can you give me some examples?
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've got some examples for you. And Ben, I'm glad you talked about that. My personality is I light up at the thought of reinvention. But the flip side of that is okay, don't reinvent, just try some temporary configurations. Put some things on pause for a minute, and you can reintroduce them later. But for the next 8 weeks, here's a temporary configuration. Try just 2 things, or don't try anything new. Put 7 things on hold and just focus on 2, which is what we're going to go to. Latricia, can you just go to the next slide for just a second? And there's an important thing.
That beautiful decision tree. I just want to tell you how much I admire that.
Thank you. The guys at Horizons will have a link to that. That's also on my website. You guys can download that, because this is more than, before we can talk about what we're going to communicate, you need to decide what you're going to do. And I'm telling you, we can't communicate until you simplify what you're doing. That has to be done first. So let's look at some samples now about being less relational and more, or being more relational and less institutional. This is one of the things I have seen in our knee-jerk reaction and our well, what do we do? How do we just keep doing what we're doing? Let's just get our services online. This is just a pretty funny meme where we're in our own little bubble in our churches, and I'm telling you, people are not at home devouring all of our church services. There's a lot more going on. So this is just kind of a funny thing to break up this content. But let's keep going, Latricia. We just needed to kind of point out the funny before and after as well. This is the reality of what we're facing, right?
That's right.
Some fun. So the thing, we don't have a pulpit now, right? There's no pulpit, or we have a digital pulpit. So what does a digital pulpit look like? We've got to get really essential first. We can go ahead and go to the next one. To answer 2 questions. Remember how I said just a minute ago, you don't have to reinvent everything. What if you put a bunch of stuff on hold and found the answer to these 2 questions? How are we retooling what we do? And how are we responding to the immediate needs? Because they're different than they were yesterday. So that's what you're doing here. Messaging matters in this. How you say it, in showing that you have awareness of the situation at hand. You don't have your normal website out there. You really should hide your normal website, put a temporary landing page that's only about what happens now for the next 8 weeks. You can turn your website back on in 8 weeks based on the new information, but make it really, really easy. How are you retooling what you're doing, and how are you responding to some crisis needs? I thought some visuals might be helpful. So I've got some samples of some websites that from churches. Oh, wait, that's our messaging. Let's go ahead and show that, Latrice. This is when messaging matters.
No kidding. It's we get better and better at it for sure. And I think that's an encouragement for everyone that I want them to hear is that we're all doing things in a new way. So if it feels like you've never done it before, it's because you haven't. And we should all give ourselves permission to learn and grow and stumble. I mean, we didn't just as babies stand up one day and start running. We had to progressively get to that point. It's just been so long that we've seen this type of seismic shifts happening in the church all at the same time. And so, you should give yourself permission to take a breath, which is what I've heard you say, Kem, which is so key. Give yourself permission to reconfigure and try things. Put it on pause. You don't have to kill it. Kill it sounds so final, but putting it on pause sounds so approachable. So these are things, and then we should recognize that over time we're gonna get better at it. But you can't get better at it if you're not doing it.
Let's look at some samples. That was really good. All right, so this is a small church I worked with in rural Texas. Their church office, they literally share a field with Texas Longhorns. And they answered those two questions. So like, okay, what are we changing? What are we doing to meet the needs? And how are we retooling what we do? They had one landing page. Hey, we're in this together. And they literally just made 6 little groups for people to stay connected. Sometimes it was downloadable resources. Sometimes it was stuff you could watch online. And sometimes it was just live Zooms. But they put it all on one page because this was just about staying connected, right? So do you see how simple it was? Resources to stay connected during this temporary season of separation. That's the only thing people need to see right now. They don't need your mission, your vision, your values, your history. It's like, right now, this is it. Remember what I told you about?
We spent so much time on those things, Kem. I mean, they were so good.
You don't have to delete it, remember? Just hide it right now.
That's right.
That's the thing about the internet too. You can change your webpage all the time and not get rid of your whole website. All right, let's look at another one, Latrice. This is a small parish in DC, and the priest focused on his community and his congregation, and it's super simple. Hey, this messaging, right? We're remaining faithful and connected under quarantine. We've never lived through a pandemic as a church, but we're here to offer connection and care for one another, including our neighbors experiencing homelessness for as long as this lasts. So that's all they're focusing on.
I love that.
And then there's buttons at the bottom. I don't know if you can see them. And there's just 4 options. That's it. That's all we're focusing on right now. Things got super essential. We will revisit everything else when we can. But right now, they're answering those questions, right? How are we retooling? How are we responding to needs? Okay.
So help me navigate real quick, kind of what this is going to look like going forward. So I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, I am buying what Kem is selling. We absolutely have to do this. So I'm the pastor. I pick up the phone. I call my creative person, and I say, you know what? We should do what Kem said. And they go, well, what did Kem say? Well, we should make it really simple. We should change everything. We should stop everything. How does this, you've been in those meetings. I've been in those meetings where all of a sudden the leader gets inspired for change and may not fully appreciate and recognize all the people that need to be involved on the same page in the decision and how to get them on the same page, and then how to create it so that you can actually sustain it, because at least for the next 6 to 8 weeks, this is going to be a topic of conversation, right? So how does this not become just, hey, let's do what Kem said, go watch this and do it. And how does this become an opportunity to collaborate and create a stronger team environment?
So friends on the webinar, that's why the decision tree is first. That's the conversation you have with your elder team, your leader team, your lay leaders. You make the decision on what's our essentials. How are we retooling? What is our simple ways that we're keeping people connected? What's our simple ways that we're responding to the needs? Everything else is on hold. Make that decision with the decision tree. that Joe and Latricia will make available on the show notes or afterwards. Then you figure out how to communicate it on your website. Your website is a lag activity. It's not a lead activity in this case. The decision tree is your lead activity.
That's huge. Say that one more time, because that is absolutely huge. The website doesn't drive the priorities of the church. The priorities of the church drive the website.
Yeah. So that was a good question. Thanks for the clarity. Latricia, let's look at a new sample. This is a church in the Dallas area, and I just love the messaging. Now they kept their whole full website, and they've started going through. They have a larger team and a guy who kind of geeks out on the visuals. But it doesn't matter, because I'm showing you all these different ones. The messaging, what matters. The simplicity is what matters. No more than 4 options right now is what matters, right? And I love this. The church has left the building, but we're still experiencing fellowship. And here's 4 things you can do. All right, let's look at another one. I love this one. I talked to one of the pastors of the church recently, and he said, so we were struggling the first couple of weeks, and we were just like, join us online. This is a great opportunity to join us online. This is an opportunity to invite your friends to our online service. And I'm like, if all we have to offer people is an invite to our online service, then we need to revisit the purposes of our church. Sunday service is one thing our church does. It's not everything our church does. And I could not be more excited for some of our smaller, more intimate congregations and parishes, because they're positioned to be better pastors and respond to the needs in some of our larger congregations. They're having a harder time pivoting.
Okay, so I want to park there for just a second, because I think what you just said was really powerful. So the title of this webinar was how to talk about generosity, life-changing impact during social distancing, right? So I think one of the things that you said 2 things that are key. One is only focus on essential communication. And right now, people want to know how they can help and where they can get help, right? Those are the 2 things that they really want to know. And then how can they find where can they get help includes the connection and spiritual formation and growth there. Yeah. The other thing you said was the advantage that smaller churches have. And when I hear you say that, one of the things I get excited about is, hyper local connections, in the sense that when your context is literally the community in which you reach, your opportunity to be embedded in that community and be a solution to the gaps in that community I want to use this word lightly, a competitive advantage when you're competing for people's time and attention. I mean,
it's just a timely advantage, because those smaller congregations are relational.
And my guess is that you're already doing a lot of those things, but because your website and your online communication isn't integrating that into its flow, and the copy and the images, not everyone may completely understand that. And I think for those congregations that can take a hyper-local strategy, this is an opportunity to massively expand your reach, and lower the barrier of entry there, and massively expand your ability to meet the needs of the community, which generates all kinds of, not just affinity and affection and trust, but man, it creates unbelievable inroads where people who might never have considered coming to your church all of a sudden see you as an agent of change. And so this isn't about great websites. It's not about getting the copyright. It's not about suddenly becoming a communications maven. This is about saying, gosh, we are the church, and this is how we've chosen to express that in this moment of time. And we want we want to make it easy, put the cookies on the low shelf, right? We want to make it easy for people who come and interact with our church, whether it's on our social feeds or online, to understand that this is a place where the body of Christ is active and making a change.
So hear this. This is all about pastoral care, all of this. So I am just using a website as an example. So once you identify, what do we need to do in this time? How do we communicate it? I'm just saying you don't need to get fancy. One landing page for now that just makes those options clear and calm. And you're responding, how are we staying connected? How are we meeting needs? And how can you be part of it, right? That's it. So that to continue that story with that pastor, when they realized, join us online, attend our online service, invite people. He's like this, we had to stop, and we realized it was all about us. It was about our service. It was about our product. It was about our website. And he's like, we realized we needed to start asking different questions and say, are you lonely? Right? We're in this together. Do you need to talk to someone? And then they changed their whole website, and this was it. This was their landing page. And it's going to be like this for the foreseeable future. They will revisit what they turn back on. It's just hidden. Like, I could go past this and access their full website, but right now, people only care about what, and do you see they got rid of all the fancy stuff? This should be an encouragement to you. Just do you, right? So you're right, Ben.
So how do you say that again and again and again without feeling like you're being repetitive, but you're appreciating the fact that there's a lot of communication messages out there. Not everybody's paying attention to you every single time you send a message, but man, do we need to be reminded, one, that our church is active and engaged in helping and serving others, and that we can be part of that solution to our communities. How do you do that without just saying the same thing over and over and over?
Right. Well, every week, you should only be focusing on two things people could do. First thing you got to do is make sure that you get your facility in order. This is your facility. Your website homepage is your only facility. Get this done first, right? Make your decision with your decision tree. Make sure you've got this landing page ready. Then each week, figure out what you're going to share. And I think it's one to three things. Like, one, what are the connection opportunities? And break them into bite-sized chunks. And you really only need to share it on Facebook and maybe an e-newsletter if you have one set up. But that's it. You don't have to get too fancy and over, but like, okay, do you have a webinar or a Zoom about mental health? Are you having live worship, or do you have church when you need it? What do you have? Like, here are our connection opportunities. Make it a post so people can share it. Here are our on-demand resources. Do you need help with family resources? Do you need help with depression resources? These are our downloads, right? You break those into bite-sized chunks. And the third thing I would say is you've got to give people a purpose in this. It's not just what you're giving them, more content, more resources, more stuff. Give them purpose, because this is where it gets into the generosity. If we're saying continue 100%. To give online, continue to give online, continue to support the work of the Lord, continue this ministry, that's not enough, because right now people are losing paychecks and they're looking at their groceries, right? They're looking at their mortgages. So they're going to need specificity if you want participation. So make it real clear. This is where we're saving money on electricity right now. We have redirected funds that we had set aside for this, and we're putting it in a crisis relief fund. We are partnering with the local food bank. We are providing meals, whatever it is. Draw a direct line to the ministry you're providing and give people a chance to participate in that. Some people are going to.
Can I jump in real quick? Because I want to back up real quick and kind of provide a framework around what you just said. So there's two groups of people sitting in your congregation. They were there before this happened, but it becomes even more apparent to what Kem is saying. So just walk with me for 45 seconds here. A part of your congregation was supporting you because they believed, they trusted in you as an organization. And a growing part of your congregation is supporting you because they believe in the projects that you're supporting. This is an opportunity to go full on project. Take what you're doing from a ministry standpoint and make it very clear, the dollar given and the impact made, so that people understand they can be part of the solution. Because I may not have as much discretionary money, or may not have the confidence to give at the same levels that I had before. Maybe I'm in a situation where I can give more. Well, we certainly, every situation is different, so we can't assume that people don't have money. We can't assume that people have an overabundance, but everyone can be part of the solution. And so when you are communicating, make sure that you're scratching that itch, because right now, people don't want to just sustain an organization. They want to be part of a movement that's bringing about a solution. And whether that's I'll commit to pray, whether that's I commit to give, whatever, use that as an on-ramp. And then we'll talk later in another time about the follow-on systems that that support that. But what you just said is really, really key, because so much of our conversation around generosity in churches prior to this has been around give because, you know, the church needs to sustain itself. And I think what this has really highlighted is that other category of givers sitting in pews, and they were there more than 3 weeks ago, that are really interested in, I want to make sure that my dollars accomplish something that's significant and substantial and material, and that I can see it. And when you communicate, as you're communicating, when you can say, hey, because of your generosity, we delivered X amount of food, or because we're starting a relief fund so that we can be available to those who are living in a financial gap right now, and we can solve that, that really elevates the clarity that the person in the pew needs in order to appreciate how they can understand and receive the message that you're sending and then respond. Because if you make me feel bad, but don't give me a way to solve the problem, that's really unmitigated emotion and opportunity.
Yeah. And Ben, I would say, Latricia, can I see the next slide? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, we don't need that yet. But boy, that's got everybody's interest piqued, I'm sure. Ben, I would like to say something else to that too. I think it's even simpler than it's been in the past. I think that line of sight and that specificity is a good rule of thumb, period, when it comes to generosity and fundraising. Specificity matters, but now more than ever, we need less hype, right? It's just simple. I don't even think we need to go as far. If you're sending a giving statement, right, or thank you note to donors, then the messaging should be, because of your donations, we were able to. I'm saying even simpler than that. You just need to say what you're doing right now. One church was real specific. They just said, right now, we are directing all of our resources and attention to 3 things: under-resourced and undocumented citizens affected by the COVID crisis, and the frontline medical workers and people who have lost their jobs because of the crisis. That is where our focus is right now. And then each day or each week, as a new event or a new chance to donate or a chance to respond appeared, they would just share that. So they just stayed focused on that. If you stay focused with your activity and your messaging, that demonstrates where that money's going. And there's people that are desperate to be part of the solution. They're trapped at home and they will do anything. And our local restaurants are doing a better job than our ministries right now, because they just said, you know, keep your local businesses open, do takeout, right? Like, you're keeping small business owners in business, you're feeding families, you're fueling our community. Just order takeout. They made it real simple. So these people don't have any money. They're not paying their bills, but they're getting takeout because they feel like they're helping, right? So it just needs to be a lot more simple than that.
Agreed. I think well said. Well said. I love it.
So what questions, do we have any questions coming in? And I do have the next slides that we had, or I'll only bring those up if those are relevant to the questions that we have. That's Joe's there.
Yeah, I do want to let everybody know that there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions. We'll ask those on the air if we've got questions from the group. So right now, we don't have any questions submitted. Ben and Kim, just continue with your conversation, and I'll let you know as those arrive.
That's perfect. Thanks, Joe.
So one of the things that I think in communicating that might be a challenge in addition to the website is that, you know, the pastor being a primary communicator, is used to communicating from the platform. And we kind of know what that's like, right? We've got the offering talks, we've got the sermon, we might have some, ministry reports that are offered. When all of a sudden I'm given, the opportunity, we'll call it that, the challenge, to communicate in small bursts rather than one long concentrated period of time. How do I transfer so that I'm as effective online as I am from the platform? What advice could you give us there?
Okay, so now we're ready for the next slide. I'm just going to give you some basics. These are some basic mistakes I've seen from either I've made them in the past or I'm seeing people make them now. Don't overproduce this. Like get help from somebody first of all, and just right size it to where you're at. So don't do it yourself though. Don't grab the iPhone if you haven't done this before and start recording things. We've got some horror stories where, you know, the whole message from the pastor is a shot up his nose. Like where you hold the camera matters, right? Like, so just have somebody coach you on where you hold the camera. Make sure your orientation is right. I've had some sad videos online where the camera angle, it should be cropped above your waist. We'll just say that. These are just basics that you don't think about, right? So just get some help. Somebody gets you framed up rightly, whether it's a phone or it's your iPad. That's the first thing you want to do. And make sure you've got some good lighting. There's all kinds of little hacks. Who is it? Tom Ford, the designer in New York, is sending out tips on how to have good Zoom calls. And one of his tips is to put white paper on your desk because the backlight from your desk helps your Zoom calls. It's little stuff like that. You don't have to go that far. I do not have white paper on my desk, just so you know. But I did move my desk by the window. So there's little things like that make it a more pleasant experience. But it's not a game changer, right? I mean, it's not a deal breaker is what I mean to say.
Sure.
The biggest thing is show your human side and be yourself. That is what is matter. What works for you, go with that. So for me, I am so much better when I'm interacting with someone. I thrive on the conversation and the interaction and the interruptions and the facial expressions. And so if you ask me to do a podcast and I'm just speaking into a microphone, it's really hard. I'm a lot more boring. I'm a less myself. My communication doesn't come through. Some people are great with that. Like, I don't know if you're watching this, if you've heard of Marco Polo, but Marco Polo is an app on your phone that you just basically record video messages and send it back and forth to people like text. So it's like recorded FaceTime. And all the introverts in my life love Marco Polo. They just talk to themselves and they send it to me. And I'm like, this is so boring. I like FaceTime. Let's get on live and go back and forth. You need to work with what brings out the best in you, right? But I will say, standing on the pulpit, going and filming in the building, even if you're comfortable standing on that stage, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone because that's not going to translate. But if you need to stand up in your living room rather than sit in a chair, do that, right? Just find what works for you. And if you need to have someone in the room that you're talking to, get your kids, get your wife, get the neighbor in a lawn chair on the other side of the camera so you just don't feel funky talking to yourself, because that's really hard to do. And I would, Ben, Joe, Latricia, if you ask me, hey, Kim, could you just put together a little video and send it over to us? Technically, guys, that's super easy. That's not hard. And I've seen great ones, and my peers are doing it. Mine will be terrible. I promise you. It's awkward. It's weird. I'm so much better interactive. So I want to give you guys permission. Figure out your delivery vehicle that brings out the best in you. Okay. And then regardless, I know there's all kinds of jokes that you don't have to wear pants. I don't care what anybody tells you, because inevitably you're going to have to stand up and go get something, and then you're going to be sorry. So that's all I'm going to say about that. It didn't happen.
Fair enough.
And then also just the relational, like, I'm just like having a blast geeking out on all this virtual meeting and the rules of the road. And this work from home reality that we're all in has become the ultimate equalizer. I mean, it is a way for us to actually all feel closer, even though we're not together. And that is also true for our elders, our pastors, our ministry leaders. You're actually closer to people through this channel than you realize. And so if you wear a robe, consider not wearing I'm not talking about your bathrobe. I think we all know that. If you're wearing a clergy robe, maybe you don't wear your clergy robe. Maybe you keep your collar on. Maybe you just wear a sweater. It's important that you're just human and informal, right? It's so important now. You can still deliver sacraments and you can still walk through liturgies, but it just needs to be more intimate and relational, and just embrace that. I think you guys have seen some of the things that's happening. We're far enough into this now where there's some good examples out there. So that's all I would say about that.
You know, one of the things, Kim, and I want to turn it back over to Joe here in just a minute, that I want to kind of make sure to draw out that we don't miss is that, you know, be human. And I think one of the things that is going to be a lingering reality beyond this is that as we all are experimenting on what it looks like to communicate with each other, both in small groups and individually, electronically, all these different channels now between Sundays, we're really going to, I think we're going to learn of how important and how essential it is for us to be present with people outside of those formal church experiences. And this is going to give us ways to understand how to do that, that are scalable, that are repeatable, and that are things that can become really assimilated into the workflows of the church. And so I think the opportunity coming out of this, of feeling connected and being able to respond to people and being able to do life with people, is going to have an expanded definition. And I just have to believe that over time, that's going to elevate the opportunities that the church has to facilitate those discipleship pathways, to facilitate those spiritually formative experiences, and to enroll people into a generosity effort that is really going to fuel the capacity of a local church to be a real and present dynamic solution to the individual, to the family, and to the community. So delighted, wonderful conversation as always, Kim. Thank you, Joe and Horizons, for hosting us and letting us kind of wander through that conversation. And thank you for those that are listening. We hope that you walk away just feeling a little more confident about what next looks like for you in relation to communication.
Ben and Kim, we do have some questions. Here's one for both Ben and Kim. If there was just one takeaway from today, what would it be?
Ladies first.
If there's one takeaway. Well, Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've been forced to listen to this whole thing. I would love to hear what your takeaway is.
So my takeaway is simplicity. People are getting too much messaging. We need to simplify. We need to talk about our church being on mission, staying focused in that direction. And I love the idea of creating I need help on my website right there. If I saw that on my church's website, I just want to hug the monitor right there, because it's such a good point.
Yeah. Latrice, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slide about staying connected, that would be real helpful. One more. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your help. Thank you so much. Can you just do this for me all through life? All right, so here's the takeaway. It's one slide, so that's the one takeaway, but it's two questions. You just need to, you don't have to figure out everything, but you need to figure this out, right? What are you positioned to do to facilitate connection and fight isolation? And how are you going to organize your people and resources to meet new needs, right? That's it. You don't have to figure out everything. You don't have to figure out what you're going to do the rest of the year. You don't have to start thinking about Christmas right now. Right now, just do this. Do a simple landing page. Be yourself. You don't have to create a bunch of content. Just do this. What are you doing to facilitate connection and fight isolation? Because that is spreading faster than the virus. And how are you going to organize your people and resources to meet the new needs? And it can be real simple. And Latrice, if you want to go to the next slide, I think that there might be something that's encouraging on there. Oh, that'll be another download. This was a sample of a church that answered those two questions, right? So there, Joe, if you ask those two questions, here's an example of a church that answered it. Okay, great. We're going to answer those two questions. Externally, these are the three things we're focusing on. Internally, here are the 3 things we're focusing on. This is our ministry strategy for the next 8 weeks. And if we're set free before then, we'll revisit it, but you need to call some audibles. And so that's an example of how you could answer the questions.
Great answer.
How I would answer that question is pay attention to what you determine as essential right now. Because I think whenever the waters kind of calm and we begin to establish what new normal is, I think it's going to be a great framework for us to ask ourselves, are we investing in the most essential things? And I think this is not the end of church as we know it. I think this is the beginning of a new awakening, if you will, for churches to really be recentered in culture and communities as places of change and transformation. And those opportunities are going to be forged by our ability to clearly communicate and articulate our passion and desire to help people right where they are and to move them along that discipleship pathway. So I see this as a really important time. So pay attention to what you determine is most essential, which is ultimately people. We know that. And what are the things that we do now to really forge that connection and build on that? Because I think that will be a huge informant for us as we move forward and establish what church is going to look like coming out of the social distancing situation that we're in now.
Thanks, Ben. We've got another question. How can one use positive messaging without being blind to the fact that we're in a crisis? Our church wants to put out encouraging words, incorporate new and humorous, lighthearted content. However, it seems like it might not be the right time due to the seriousness of what's happening.
Oh, what a thoughtful question. Oh, I love it so much. That's such a good question. So first of all, that's really, really good. Being encouraging, first of all, it's a tremendous encouragement in your messaging if you just show that you are in it with people. Being relational is the win right now, right? So first of all, you demonstrate that you understand the situation at hand with the clarity. That's the first thing. Then you can, the more human you are is also encouraging. Be careful with our platitudes or out of context scriptures or graphic social posts, graphic design. Graphic social post is a different thing. But so if we're just putting graphics on our social media with scriptures, those could be taken out of context and land very poorly, like walking into a funeral home and telling people, don't be sad, don't be sad. God is with you. No, they are sad. And people are scared. So I love that you are sensitive to that, whoever asked that question. That's very, very good. That being said, I've seen some really good examples. There's one church that's just sending one update a week. And in that update, they're listing, here's the new resources we have for help. Here's the ways to connect next week. And here's something on the lighter side, right? And they have something in there for the lighter side. So that particular church had a weekly update. I've seen different ministries that already have channels set up, if they have a Facebook page or if they have Instagram or if they have small groups. They're just sharing memes, right? Like, you're going to win if you share the encouragement or the funny things in the context of relationship. So as a corporation or an institution, you're going to be less successful unless you put it in the context like the sample I showed you or that I mentioned with that church that had the weekly email, right? If you want to do an institutional, fun side, encouraging side, then build it in an update. Otherwise, find little relational connections in your weekly touch point on the sermon or in a resource that people download. Those smaller touch points, you'll be much more successful in that.
You know, Kim, to correct me or tell me if you agree with me with this or not. One of the easiest ways that I think to accomplish that is just by keeping it focused on an individual's experience or journey, because that keeps it focused on the other. It keeps it very human, And it constantly reiterates the hope that wherever you are, there is a next step. And I think that's really a really, really important thing. So if you're concerned about being repetitive or how can you be sensitive, everyone wants to see a peer. Well, first of all, people want to know that they're not the only one that's experiencing the same thing that they're experiencing. And they want to see somebody who's risen above that, because that then makes it possible. No matter what we say, when we can show an individual who's overcome a situation, wow, it really convinces us that we can overcome the same situation.
So here, practical matters, Ben, in an example of what you're saying, practical matters. So it's not a quote or some ethereal inspiration. It is your church posting a meme or something like that that says, are you trying to figure out how to save your marriage during quarantine, right? Like, here, we're going to have a webinar with an elder in our church that's a psychologist. Here's some quarantine marriage survival tips. Are you afraid, are you losing your mind because overnight you've become a whole homeschooler, right? Like, we are having our preschool team do Q&As, but you can make jokes with those intros to the things that you're making available. That's another way to do it. Lighter side, a little bit of encouragement, but like when you're literally validating that on the ground reality somebody is facing, that is so encouraging, where you just call it out. Are you stressed? Yeah, we got some help for that.
Thanks, Kem. I got another question. I know times are different. Our audience right now is so much more than our regular attenders. Seems like many of our regular attenders expect a lot of content from us right now because that's what they're used to seeing. But maybe we're inundating the new people that have joined us. We have worship on Sunday. We go live at noon Monday through Friday with different staff members. Monday night with our pastor. We do regular podcasts and different ministry posts within our face group. How do you know when it's too much?
I can tell you right now, that's too much. That's just too much. Download that decision tree and figure out what you're going to simplify.
Yes.
Just for 8 weeks, not forever. And I understand why you're doing that. Like, you're trying to increase the connection, make all these things available, but it's too much because your church is not the only thing in their life. Many, many people have gotten even busier and gotten even more distracted. That doesn't mean they don't need the church. It means how they interact might be different. So I do need to know what are my live opportunities, right? And I need to know what my on-demand opportunities are. And maybe there's just one recommended resource for the next 8 weeks, or there's one devotional that you're recommending, but there's so much, the government forms that people are filling out, the school work that they're trying to figure out. Now, if you have members that are pressuring you that have time on their hands, because I've got some family members that have all the time on their hands, and they are blowing up my email, they are blowing up my phone with all kinds of ideas of how I can fill my time, with new book clubs, new devotionals I should subscribe to, new sermons I should listen to, and I want to unfollow them, but they're in my family. And that would cause a whole nother crisis. And so that's not what you're not there to fill people's time. But you, again, like those website examples, you show what's available, simplify it for now, give them space to, give them purpose to be a help in the community, give them options, but your job is not to fill their time with the church. And those options were more applicable when you were in your normal business as usual. You're not your business as usual. It's also not sustainable for the next 8 to 12 weeks. So if you're trying, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it's also possible that they might've been over communicating before too. I think one of the things that you said earlier, Kem, that was really key is that put everything on pause and bring things back one at a time based on that decision tree, and understand that you can make a different decision every week. With that, another option might be that you deliver some of that content through membership specific channels, which might be an email or if you have any kind of church management system that you distribute that content through directly to small groups. But keep your larger, kind of non-subscriber viewer, casual, that's really, I think, beginning to stagger a little bit and say, we might have ways of communicating with our membership that don't necessarily aren't relevant to people in the entire universe who might be plugging into us the first time.
That's so good, Ben. That's right. So because I hear in the question two things. One, pressure from our existing church for all these things. Well, handle those on a relational level. You've got two ways to handle that. If you guys are already meeting, like, great, just facilitate that. If those are your groups and your connections, depending on the size of your church. If it's just a pressure from, if it's an inappropriate pressure, it's okay for you to look at your church and say, for now, we're pausing all of that. And we're only focusing on these three things. We will refocus on that in the future. But for now, these are the things we're focusing on. You can give that clarity. But it doesn't mean if you do choose to do all of that, you have to put it all on your website. But I also am concerned for just the stamina of the clergy. I've talked to several pastors and priests that are they're exhausted and they can't sustain it either. And so we're not helping our churches. We're not helping our spiritual health. We're not helping our institutions, our community, if we're frying our pastors. So getting them in a place that it's sustainable too, and having them do what's best for the long haul is important.
The only other thing I would add to that, Kim, is that not everybody is aware of everything that the church is doing in the same way that the pastor is. And so if you can get your leadership together and take an inventory of all the current communication, all the current activities that are taking place, it might be the first time that they've seen the entire list, who it goes to, the frequency, and the systems and people and resources required to sustain it. And this is something that an exercise I work with, whether you're $5 million organization or $500 million a year organization, we still need to come back around and remind ourselves that what we are used to getting might be just one of 100 initiatives that a particular leader is dealing with. And so particularly in this time, and Kim, I think your highlight on burnout is really key. The non-negotiables are being able and ready to help when and where that help is needed. So anything that diminishes our capacity to do that is something that becomes discretionary and should be applied to that decision tree.
Right.
And then I think providing that inventory helps everyone see that, man, we are doing a lot. And what's most important is that we major on the majors right now, because that's what's most important right now. And give ourselves permission every 5 days to make 7 days to make a different decision.
And remember the cognitive stuff that we shared at the beginning. Latrice, can you put up the slide about the 3rd century pandemic? Joe, you were going to say something. Thanks.
Go ahead.
I just thought that this might be helpful. It just supports what Ben just said. So go ahead. That was it. People can read that.
So we've been going about an hour and 12 minutes here. Just a couple of quick questions briefly, and we're going to have to close it out. I thank everybody for submitting questions. What happens if we're trying to simplify, but our statistics have tanked? And by statistics, I think that means worship attendance, giving. What's a happy medium? How do we know what to do?
Well, right now, everybody's metrics are really distorted right now, which is what the beauty of this essential strategy is. I guarantee you ramping up more content and generating all this insecurity work is not going to help our metrics. Everybody's metrics in the entire globe has tanked right now. And so that's why, again, this quote right here on this slide is really important. We need to focus on the immediate needs. People are going to remember us for our compassion, our relatability, and our response. This is our chance. We are going to see a better response if we focus on the essentials. So going back to those two questions, how are we facilitating connection and fighting a social isolation, a couple of handles, and how are we responding to needs? That's going to impact our stats in better ways. Attendance, you cannot track right now. Don't fall victim to the vanity stats of, well, we've got more clicks on our website than we ever have, and we've had people engaged. These are very shallow stats. They're an indicator that someone has found you, but they're not true engagement stats, and they don't affect a long-term strategy. So you just focus on being the church, and the stats will follow. We're going to have to regroup when we get out of this. Nothing is normal. So I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer, Joe.
I think it's a great answer. Two quick questions for you, Kim. You've put out a lot of information today. What is our starting point?
It is definitely the decision tree.
Excellent.
Yep.
The last question, Kim, do you coach churches?
I do. I coach churches and people and businesses, but not little league teams.
Nice. Nice qualifier.
Yeah.
All right. So you can reach out to Kim at Less Chaos, Less Noise, if you're interested in visiting with her about that. Terrific today. Ben, Kim, so excited to have you be a part of this. Want to remind everybody within 24 hours, you'll get a notice of how to download this webinar from Giving 365. If you want to share it, I encourage you to send it to your friends and others who didn't have a chance to listen to it. It has just been terrific. Anything in closing before we sign off?
You're going to be okay, and you're doing a good job.